Hi guys, I'm Skaina Benz at the House of Laws to speak to the powerful people who make decisions about your life, your health and your well-being. And we are here to get your voices heard today.
Thank you, Lord Collins. PMNCH is convening the 1.8 billion Young People for Change campaign, a global youth-led effort to mobilize
Okay, you guys are outside.
for adolescent well-being.
Unite! Unite! Rise! Rise! Lead! Lead! Young people, this is our time. We are 1.8 billion young people in the world today, standing as one to reach equality. In the world today, where dreams ignite, we stand as one, younger shining bright, united in spirit, we make a change. For 1.8 billion strong, our voices rearrange. With hope in our eyes, we'll break these walls together. We'll rise, we'll answer the call, bound by our purpose. A love beyond compare, justice, our right. We'll surely get there. We are 1.8 billion young people strong. Symphonies of voices singing in the song. Let's rise above, let's compassionately go. Right our future, we will seize the day. We are uniting, we are rising, we are leading. For better feel alive, for better kind of world. It's time to listen, it's time for action. We'll break the chains of inequality and strive in solidarity, igniting love. We'll champion justice, better days and nights. Ours is the power as we claim our rights. We are 1.8 billion young people strong. Symphonies of voices singing in the song. Let's rise above, let's compassionately right our future, we will seize the day. We are uniting, we are rising, we are leading. For better feel alive, for better kind of world. It's time to listen, it's time for action. As we come together hand in hand, the world will witness the change we have planned. With unity and love, we will overcome. For 1.8 billion young hearts, we are one.
It was quite a day yesterday. As we meet here at the GFA, we stand together with so many young people, women and children, who are suffering in crises happening around the world, but most recently in Gaza and Israel. Our hearts are with you.
And today we have got another great lineup for you today, including inspirational young leaders, big announcements, and next steps.
The conversations we're having here are only the beginning. We're going to be talking about the new agenda for action for adolescents, the new commitments made by governments and other partners, and of course, we're going to have a dialogue with civil society leaders about how we can make sure this all leads to the action that we want to see.
Meanwhile, we are very happy to have Shai Sarui from Brazil. Now, she is a leader at the forefront of global environmental activism. Now, you'll see her speaking in Kenya as part of our advocacy around the world to unite with land defenders to protect our environment.
Eu sou Chai Surui, sou liderança jovem do povo Paité Surui, da terra indígena 7 de setembro, da Amazônia brasileira. E hoje eu estou aqui em Nairobi, no Quênia, me conectando com outros ativistas também, né, me conectando com outras comunidades que também vêm lutando e enfrentando as emergências climáticas. Estou aqui também para trazer a voz da Amazônia e dos povos originários para todo mundo. Um olhar, né, de que se entende como nós somos seres natureza. Hoje, nós estamos vivendo uma emergência, né? A gente já sofre as consequências daquilo que os povos indígenas vêm avisando há muito tempo. Mas nós também somos parte da solução para o enfrentamento dessas mudanças climáticas. É dentro dos territórios indígenas do Brasil que a floresta ainda continua de pé, graças à presença dos povos indígenas, que cuidam, que protegem, que plantam, que reflorestam, que cuidam das nascentes, dos animais, que cuidam da vida, né? Então a gente vem trazer essa voz de esperança também, né? Que apesar das nossas gerações serem as que vão mais sofrer as consequências, mais que os nossos pais, os nossos avós, nós também estamos muito mais conscientes, né, daquilo que estamos enfrentando. E sabemos a emergência que isso significa e que nós somos parte da solução. Podemos ser nós todos guardiões da floresta. E as crianças e os nossos jovens são a esperança, porque quando a gente fala de um futuro, a gente pensa nas nossas próximas gerações. Mas nós, como povos indígenas, quando falamos de futuro, também falamos de um futuro ancestral. Ou seja, reconectar também as nossas crianças com esse planeta, os nossos jovens com esse planeta, para que nós entendamos todos aquilo que nós, povos indígenas, já estamos falando, né? Que nós somos seres natureza.
What an inspiration she is, and demonstrating such immense courage. And now for today's watch party, we're going to Pretoria in South Africa.
Hello to the Global Forum for Adolescents under the 1.8 billion Young People for Change. We are coming to you from South Africa at the State Theatre. My name is Mshonto Buhlekeleba, and I am with the vibrant youth of South Africa standing behind Unite, Rise and Lead. That's right. Right now, I'm just going to be speaking to two special young people for what cause they are standing behind. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me.
All right, tell us about your cause, who you are, what is your cause?
My name is Tebogo Lucas Boya. I am an intern here at the Wardrobe Department for South African State Theatre. The cause I believe in and something that I firmly want everybody to be up with is the digital divide and just the lack of information that everybody seems to be going through. I don't like that we are in the city and we get access to information, yet kids in the villages don't have the same access that we do. I also believe in inclusivity in workplaces. I'm very fortunate to be in a space that does allow inclusivity.
Absolutely.
But I believe, like Mark Lema once said, no freedom until we equal. I don't believe that other people need to be feeling excluded in other spaces as opposed to being accepted for who they are. So acceptance and just inclusivity in spaces is all I care for.
And you heard that. And now we will be chatting to another special young person. Tell us your name as well as the cause that you stand for.
I am Simphiwe Masilo. I'm part of the Youth Policy Committee at SIA, which is South African Institute of International Affairs. And recently we launched the South African Youth Gender Action Plan, which stands on 7 pillars of education, gender-based violence, health, safety and security, sustainable transformation, as well as gender identity and sexuality. And under each of these pillars, considering that it's a policy document written by the youth, it has suggestions on exactly how the youth can make a change and how the youth can reach their SDG goals, as well as suggestions on how stakeholders can also be involved in creating this change.
Absolutely. You heard it right here from Mzansi Afrika. The beautiful shores are saying the SDG goals, young people need to be at the center of it. We are 1.8 billion. Over to you in the plenary. Thank you. Reunite, rise, and lead. Woo, thank you, guys.
Ah, thanks for that, guys. Well, now we are handing over to our resident genius, the amazing Apurva, who we saw yesterday with her message about youth values and the world of work. Now, today, she is putting that into action as she leads us through to our second.
That's right. And the subject of this plenary is Rise to Success, Unlocking Solutions for Adolescent Well-Being. We're going to hear about some incredible initiatives and advocacy which have resulted in major wins.
So, we'll be back soon.
Hello and thank you. It's so inspiring to see how young changemakers and allies are rising to the challenges thrown at them by the poly crisis that surrounds them. This is an absolutely big moment of truth and momentous change. I am so excited to welcome you to day 2 of the Global Forum for Adolescents, a milestone of the 1.8 billion Young People for Change campaign, and the biggest ever gathering of adolescents, young people, and allies all coming together to push for the better well-being for adolescents and for all of us. My name is Apurva Panidapu. I'm currently studying math, computer science, and policy here at Stanford. I'm a young math researcher, the founder of my own online art gallery for global service, and creator of the award-winning column Gems in STEM. My mission is to help Gen Z leaders be at the forefront of the future of work, innovation, and inclusion. And today, I'm your moderator for this plenary discussion, Rise to Success, Unlocking Solutions for Adolescent Well-Being. The 1.8 billion Young People for Change is all about getting politicians and people with power to take notice and invest in us. It's a long-term advocacy campaign coordinated by PMNCH, and it's championed by our fierce partners. So why should we listen to young people? What actually gets adolescents and young people fired up to take action? How do we make change happen? Well, we're about to hear some incredible change makers and trailblazers speak their truths, sharing stories on how they turned their life experiences into rocket fuel for change, making a positive impact on millions across the globe. But before we hear their stories, I want to hear from you, our wonderful audience. What's on your minds? What do you think? A question will be shown on the screen momentarily. We ask that each of you answer this question with just a single word. Your contributions will populate the word cloud, giving us a visual representation of your collective thoughts and ideas. For those unfamiliar with Slido, participating is pretty straightforward. You scan the QR code, which will be displayed on the screen. I think it's right there. Simply use your mobile device's camera to scan the code, and you will be automatically redirected to the Slido interface. Or a direct web link will be provided in the chat. Clicking on that will also take you to the Slido interface where you can submit your word. We can't wait to see your contributions come alive in the word cloud. So here's our first question. In one word, tell us what you think is the key to success for an adolescent well-being initiative. And you'll have about a minute to add your words. Here we see them popping up. I'm really liking the answers so far. I think inclusion is a very, very big thing, and it's something that's so important to individual well-being. We have funding, inclusivity, education, youth participation, support, courage, I like that one, accessibility, youth engagement. These are really good answers, and the bigger the word, the more that people have said it. So you can sort of see how popular your answer was. Keep it going for a couple more seconds. Intersectionality, that's an amazing word. Meaningful support, diversity, political will, interesting, equality. Inclusion is the biggest one though so far. Okay. I think it's almost about to wrap up, but the answers are all super, super good ones. When we're thinking about well-being, especially for young people, I think inclusion and funding and education and inclusivity, which kind of falls under the umbrella of inclusion, are just probably some of the most important things we can think about because I think finding a space where you feel supported and you feel safe to share your voice and share your story is so important. And I think we'll see some of that from our speakers today who will share, how they overcame adversity to give voices to people who don't normally have that kind of, voice in the spaces they're in. But thank you so much for all your answers. I think we can move on to our second question on Slido. The second question, in your view, what do you think is the biggest obstacle to a successful initiative? So this is sort of the flip side of it. First, we thought about what's the key to success, and now what is the biggest challenge or the biggest obstacle? I think this will be interesting to see the answers and if it's sort of the opposite of what we saw in the first question. We'll give that a second. Funding. Yeah, that's kind of both a key to success and an obstacle if you don't get funding. Lack of funding, yep. Inequality, apathy. Culture, yeah. I think if you have a harmful or toxic culture, whether that's in a workplace or in a classroom, it can be very detrimental to young people's success or well-being. Yep. Funding, once again. Adults, adult-centric, inequality, community ownership, all sorts of very, very good answers. Trust. Yes, if there's a lack of trust, I think, especially in, your kids and teenagers and the young people of today, it's very hard to feel like your voice is heard and that you can make a difference. So I think that trust goes both ways. Absolutely funding. It's very hard to get your ideas into the world without funding. Culture. Capitalism is an interesting one. Human rights violations. Respect. These are some great answers. Yeah, well, we have a lot of very, very good answers talking about what is this big challenge. And I think we'll hear a lot about how our speakers overcame these challenges, like trust or culture or having a lack of support. And I think it's going to be very exciting to hear how to overcome these obstacles, especially if it's something that you're struggling with in your own life and your own well-being. So now for the exciting part of the plenary today. Let me introduce our amazing change makers that we'll hear from today. I am so inspired to be here with all four of these fantastic leaders, each with an incredible story and a unique journey, but with one big thing in common. They're changing the game, and they're making a massive impact on a wide range of people and communities. So let's dive into their stories. We're talking about their journeys and what lit that fire to go out there and make things happen. So first, we will start with Helena Branco, a youth, gender, and climate activist from Brazil. She's a youth climate ambassador for the Climate Reality Project and a Women Deliver Young Leaders alumni. She is the one driving the Free to Menstruate movement. So, Helena, please tell us your story. What is fueling this fire for you?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Apurva. It's a pleasure to be here. Well, it all started when COVID-19 hit Brazil, underscoring inequalities that already existed. However, one issue was being pushed aside and forgotten, which was period poverty. And when we think of menstruation, it is indeed a private matter. But a healthy menstrual cycle is a human right, and it can turn into a serious public problem for our society when people don't have the knowledge to understand their bodies, facilities such as restrooms in good conditions, or the menstrual products for a healthy menstrual cycle, which can lead to people missing school classes or ending up with health problems. And in early 2020, by the time I was 18 years old, young activists, we noticed that aid packages for vulnerable communities during the pandemic excluded menstrual products. And high taxes also made these products unaffordable for low-income individuals. And that's when leaders from Girl Up in Brazil, a global movement empowering young people, stepped up and created Free to Menstruate.
That is so inspiring. Like you said, period poverty is such a major issue affecting girls in high and low income countries. In fact, the World Bank estimates that at least 500 million women and girls globally lack access to the facilities that they need to manage their periods. We can all agree that it's a disgrace that some girls are forced to drop school simply because they can't access proper period projects, which, like you said, is a human right. Things have to change. Thank you so much for your work, Helena. Now, let's continue to talk about another major issue for young people, access to financing. Young people have great ideas, but how do these ideas turn into a reality without money or support? It's basically impossible. And like we saw in the previous question, funding could be one of the biggest obstacles in this journey for well-being. And it's even more of a struggle for people from lower socioeconomic contexts. So how do we turn dreams into reality? Well, I'm so happy to have Regis Bamba from Côte d'Ivoire here with us today. He is the co-founder of Jumbo, a fintech company that offers personal finance services for Francophone Africans. Regis, could you tell us about your motivation and your mission with Jumbo?
Hi, Apurva. My name is Regis. I'm the co-founder, one of the co-founders of Jambo. So Jambo is a fintech operating out of West Africa, specifically in Côte d'Ivoire. And you might be surprised by only 20% of people have access to financial services in the region. It's one of the reasons why we started Jambo, because we had the same issue. We had trouble opening a bank account. And it worked so well because the product is very relevant that in 3 years, we got to more than 1 million clients and crossed the $1 billion transaction volume. So it shows you that there's a good appetite for this kind of product in the region. It's a very necessary product for the region.
That's incredible. Especially with the way the world's finances are looking right now, it's such an important cause to be working on. We're already seeing reports that show that social protection has taken a serious hit in the midst of this multi-crisis situation we're dealing with. And that's why we need people like Regis. Thank you so much for sharing a bit about your journey. So now we're going to hear from Enrique, who is passionate about interconnectedness and access to information for young people like us. Enrique Anarte is a Spanish journalist specializing in LGBTQIA+ topics. He is a vertical video creator, currently working as the Thomas Reuters Foundation's TikTok lead for its queer news platform, Openly. Enrique, could you please tell us a little bit about your story?
Thank you so much for having me here today. As Elena said before, my journey started also with COVID-19 and with the first COVID lockdowns in Germany, where I live. Before the pandemic, I had the experience, and I think many young journalists had the same experience, that traditional media outlets were not giving young people the opportunities that I thought they deserved. And there was also this general idea that this had a strong impact in how young people, how there was a growing mistrust in traditional media among young people. experts kept saying that young people didn't care about the news. My experience was that the news didn't care about young people, and that traditional media outlets were not giving space for young people to include the perspective of the youth in what was being covered and how it was being covered. At the same time, misinformation about LGBTQIA plus issues was growing around the world, and not only online, but it was also starting to influence policymaking in more and more countries. And that's how I decided that I was not just going to sit and wait for traditional media outlets to cover stories about the queer community where young people were spending their time on platforms like TikTok. And I decided to start making those stories myself.
Thank you so much for sharing, Enrique. What an amazing story. There is so much information out there, but there is absolutely inequality in how it's distributed, the accuracy of it, and the voices that are represented in the news and media. So thank you for your advocacy and work in this space. And finally, let's hear from Daniela Liguero. Daniela is the co-founder of the Brave Movement and CEO of Together for Girls, a partnership to end violence against children and adolescents. Daniela, what first motivated you to do the work that you do?
Hey, thanks so much. First of all, let me say it is such an honor to be here with you, amazing leaders. Wow, I'm just really humbled by these stories. So yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Brave Movement. We are a survivor-led movement working all around the world on advocacy to end all forms of sexual violence against children, adolescents, and youth. We launched about 1.5 years ago. I think like a lot of us, we were busy doing COVID, watching what was happening and what was going wrong in the world and decided to do something about it. And for me, this movement that's really grown exponentially in only 18 months with platforms all over the world doing phenomenal advocacy starts in a very personal place because I am a survivor of childhood sexual violence. And one of the things I really found over time, and we know from the data, is that this is a massive issue that affects about 1 in 4 to 1 in 6 girls under the age of 24, and about 1 in 5 to 1 in 10 boys under the age of 24. So it happens to everywhere, to everyone. It happens in schools, in sports, in religious organizations, in homes, in communities, and now online. And so really the Brave Movement is a place to center survivor voices. We are survivor-led. We have a board of all survivors from around the world, who invites all allies, young people, parents, anyone who wants to be part of the solution to end all forms of sexual violence against children and adolescents.
Thank you so much for sharing, Daniela. Your work protecting youth whose voices are often ignored is so necessary, and we're all thankful for the hard and I'm sure very emotionally difficult work you do. It's very, very inspiring. It's deeply humbling to hear all these stories of motivation and the intersectionality of these issues, from period poverty to personal finance to LGBTQIA+ and journalism activism, and of course, work against sexual violence for young people. So let's dive deeper. How did all of you even begin to tackle these enormous challenges? What were the secret ingredients that made your mission go big? Let's start with Helena.
Well, thank you, Apurva. I'm super excited to tell you more about Free to Menstruate. Well, our journey started by fundraising money to donate around 100,000 menstrual products to communities in vulnerable conditions. But we quickly realized that to make a long-lasting change, we needed to work with lawmakers to create laws that could fight period poverty. So we teamed up with elected people, politicians, especially women, in different cities and states who were excited to help us write what we call a public policy, a law. And this teamwork between older and younger generations was a very powerful collaboration for our success. So in June of 2020, we passed our first law in the state of Rio de Janeiro. So menstrual products became part of the aid packages given out to people in need in the state. And it was a huge win, but we did not stop there. And Free to Menstruate kept going strong. And by the end of 2021, we introduced and passed laws in over 40 towns in Brazil and 9 states. But then in October of 2021, we faced a big challenge. The president at the time vetoed the first national bill aimed at helping people dealing with period poverty, meaning that he wanted to stop our plan to make a national law for period justice. And it was also very important for our movement at the time, as Enrique was saying, to raise awareness online and through different channels such as newspapers, social media, and TV programs. And in fact, we were even featured in the first nationwide news piece about period poverty in Brazil. And it was only after 5 months in March of 2022 that we, young activists and elected politicians, came together in the Brazilian capital, Brasilia, to change the president, to challenge and change the president's veto. And on that day, the young activists from Free to Menstruate were invited to the House of Representatives in the Brazilian Congress during the voting session. And guess what? We won and the veto was overturned. And that was a big moment in our journey. And it meant that we had the first national law that says the government has to give out menstrual products to the people who need it most. And this law is going to impact around 6 million people in vulnerable conditions. And well, to conclude, Free to Menstruate goes beyond menstrual rights and justice. It demonstrates how persistence and collaboration can create successful actions. It is proof of the young change makers' power and how important it is to invest in young women's participation in political decision making. And the young women from Brazil who founded Free to Menstruate, such as me, we come from backgrounds often underrepresented in politics. Yet it was within the political arena that we found a platform not only to make our voices heard, but to positively impact millions of people. So I think that's my message. Thank you so much, Purva.
Thank you so much for sharing, Helena. You've helped 40 municipal bills and 9 state bills pass on menstrual justice across Brazil. And it's clear to see that your perseverance and bravery was a huge part of how you made this happen. I think COVID totally taught us about how we can use online platforms and the power of young people's voices to really change things. And it's so inspiring to see how you made that happen for period poverty. Now, on to the next speaker. Regis, it's so impressive and inspiring to see the increasing investment and massive recognition that your work has attracted. In 2023, JAMO employs 165 people, of which 52% are women, with an average age of under 30 years. How did you make all of this happen?
Well, thank you, Apuva. The first thing that we did is that we focused on the value that we're bringing to the people. So what we did is that we put the user at the center of the value proposition. We spent the majority of time talking to the users. We did focus group. We called the users, we went on the ground, and that's how we're able to figure out actually what the user will affect. And we're able to put out products like salary accounts, savings, all these products because we listen to the users. The second thing that we did, we said it, is find the money, because without money, you cannot do anything. And we applied to Y Combinator, which is one of the best startup incubators in the world. And we're able to raise $14 million. And with that money, we had the necessary resources to go ahead and build the product. So without the money, you cannot actually build anything. So you need to make sure that in your strategy, you have a plan to actually get the money. And the last thing that we did was to find the right team. You need people, you need like the right people. And made sure that we recruited people that were motivated by the kind of impact they were making around them. And like you said, it worked pretty much. We have like a team of more than 165 people, 25 years old on average, and 52% women. And those people are very impact-driven and mission-driven, and they fight every day for the customer, and they make sure that whatever they implement, works well for the customer.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. I think that was basically a crash course on personal finance and how to make an idea go big. So thank you for that. I think the audience got it exactly right when we talked about the obstacles for well-being and for personal success when they talked about funding. Without funding, it's very hard to build anything. And you really have to think about the long game and find a strategy and surround yourself with the right people that are also motivated by the same mission. So thank you for sharing. And then on to our next speaker, Enrique. It's so true that Gen Z and other young people have a whole new way of taking in the news. But when it comes to finding sources that are real, trustworthy, and informative, the options are very limited, like you said. So from your journey, what are the top takeaways that you have?
So I started doing this as I said before, in the first COVID lockdown. I was at home, and I downloaded TikTok like millions of other people across the world for fun. And then at some point, I was interested in politics. I worked already on reporting on LGBTQ plus rights. And I seen videos about it, and suddenly, like tens of people were following this random Spanish guy that no one knew, and many more people were getting the content. And while I was like maybe dancing in my living room, or just like sitting at the table with my cat and talking about an issue that mattered to people, this was news at the end of the day. It was just a new, maybe a more engaging, more creative way of telling the news, but it was news at the end of the day. And I think that made me, and also many other journalists, because I am not alone in this field. There are many other young journalists who are doing what I'm doing, trying to take young people, young audiences seriously. I think that showed us that we were right, that we could make news in a different way, that what is most important for me, that does not talk down to people, but engage with audiences as equals in a conversation where journalism is not, deciding what matters to audiences and how. And I wanted to talk about mental health, because it wasn't always easy. It was suddenly you are exposing a lot of your private life, and you're just a journalist, you're just doing your job, you're not a celebrity, and suddenly that can have, you can pay a high price for exposing so much of your private life to millions of people that don't know you. And some people can be very mean online, and I think the generations that haven't known life before social media have paid a very high price on this. We're just starting to see what the damaging effects of social media can be, especially when you don't have a perspective of what life was like before social media. But at the same time, social media can be useful to empower younger generations and tell those stories that we want to tell. And I think for me, this has completely changed my career, because I wanted to be a writer, and suddenly I found this way of telling stories where I do not just as a journalist decide what has to be written, but I have a direct relationship with my community, and they tell me what they're interested in. They tell me what perspectives they would like to hear, and that helps me grow professionally, but it also helps me have a healthier relationship, and I think it helps rebuild the trust. I was very happy to see that one of the words that showed up before was trust, because that's for me one of the main issues right now when it comes to both disinformation and the relationship with the media industry, but also with LGBTQ plus issues in general, because the community has stopped trusting policymakers that have let so much disinformation flow into policymaking, for example. So I think for me, I was very happy that for years I was told it is not journalism question, and sorry that it went going full circle. For me, the takeaway is that if you're a young person and you have a story to tell, do not listen to those people. You think that story should be told. Do not listen to those people who are not telling you that is not journalism. That is not the story that should be told. The takeaway is that if you believe in your story, find a way to tell it. Find a creative way to tell it. If you don't have place, for example, in traditional media outlets, and guess what? Telling those stories the way I wanted to tell them is what got me my job and what brought me here today to tell you all about this journey. So just tell your story.
Thank you so much, Enrique, for telling your story. I think that there's a lot of positive and negative rhetoric around social media, but like you said, it really gives marginalized voices a chance to be heard by millions of people in a way that has just never existed before. And I love the point that you brought up about making news a conversation and giving people a chance to engage with it, because I think it can be very dangerous to just blindly consume information online. And again, thank you so much for also talking about protecting your own personal well being and private life and the power of sharing your story. And I'm sure that everyone listening is incredibly inspired. And now, finally, our last speaker, Daniela, your story is so inspiring. The vision of a world where every child and adolescent thrives, free from the threat of sexual violence. Please tell us more from your experience. What has been the toughest mountain to climb? And what's an underappreciated superpower that we should be considering more to make a real impact on the world?
Oh, I love that second part. I'll get to that in a second. Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges with the issue of sexual violence against children, adolescents, and youth is there's still so much stigma and shame associated with it. So we know from data that most people that experience sexual violence in childhood or adolescence actually never tell anyone. And there's this sense of carrying that kind of alone and internalizing that, and a lot of shame and stigma that goes with it. And so what that creates is isolation and loneliness and all kinds of mental health issues. It impacts, young people's ability to go to school, to succeed, to do well. And I think the biggest lesson for me has been, and it was my own experience, I was eventually able to get the support I needed to work on these issues and decided to go public with my story. I love what you were saying, Enrique. It is hard when you publicly start sharing things that are very intimate. It exposes you in a way. But what it also does is it makes other people feel less alone. And the power of our movement has been more and more people coming together and realizing, wait a minute, I'm not alone. This wasn't about me or something specific to my context. This is actually happening to youth everywhere in every context. And if we can come together, we can be powerful agents to change what's happening. And so the movement is around coming together, not feeling alone, breaking down stigma and discrimination, working with allies, because it shouldn't just be on survivors. Allies need to step up too and speak out on these issues, and really together demanding the kinds of changes we need to see from institutions, from leaders, from organizations that frankly allow this to continue wherever it's happening. And so, we've been able to, just as an example, when we launched last year, we organized all around the world and were able to push the G7, the 7 most powerful countries in the world, to, for the very first time at the highest level of leadership, put the issue of sexual violence against children and adolescents on their agenda, especially when it comes to online child sexual exploitation and abuse that has just been growing exponentially. So it really showed us that if you come together and if you believe in what you're doing, you can really have an impact. The final thing I'll say is funding. It's people, it's coming together, power and funding. We had to go out and get the funding to do some of this work, and we continue to try to get funding to do it. But it's always amazing to me that when you have a passion and a commitment to an issue, very little funding can go a long way. So I'm excited about what's next. And I actually invite everyone who's interested to go online and look up the Brave Movement and become a member. We're growing rapidly and trying to define our agendas together with those of you who are out there and care about this issue.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I think what you talked about, the power of having a community and knowing that there are people out there who can understand and empathize with your experience, is just so important. And I think the pandemic really showed us that too. It does take a lot of bravery to put yourself out there. So thank you so much for helping all the young people out there. And I think all the people watching are now very inspired to be allies and should absolutely check out the Brave Movement. But thank you all so much for sharing all of your stories and sharing how you got there, because I think a lot of us, when we're thinking about big issues that are important to us or that make us very upset in this day and age, it's really easy to feel a bit powerless in finding a way to help. And these stories are how you know that there are ways and there are paths to make a difference as an individual and to also power of movement that can really make a huge difference across the world. So now, let me ask each panelist in one word, what is your advice to the new generation of change makers who are watching you or their allies? And we can start off with Helena.
In one word. Oh my God, that's really
In
hard.
one word. We had the audience do
Okay.
one word, and now it's your guys' challenge.
I would say, I mean, I would say be bold, but also be calm internally. Because young people have the time to make mistakes, but also have the guts to be very pioneer and, make the change. That's not a word, but okay, in a word, I'd say support system. Create your support system so you can make mistakes and feel okay about them, and you can just we say in Brazil that good activists are activists with good mental health. So let's be these people. Support system is definitely my word.
Thank you so much. And we do have some extra time, so feel free to elaborate on your one word. I am curious, because we have some time, is there any advice that you wish you had gotten at the beginning of your journey, when you started, your important work or your movements or something like that?
You're asking me to elaborate on it or someone else? Okay.
Yeah, you. And then we'll go through each panelist.
So I'd say that young people tend to be very brave and very bold, and we want to see change fast. And I think that's really important because we don't have time. I mean, climate change, many things happening. We don't have time anymore. We need to go faster than the other generations did in creating positive change. So don't be afraid, take your ideas forward, but also keep your calm internally. So as I said, we have time to make mistakes and we're in the beginning of a learning journey. So always cultivate the support system. There's a very amazing African proverb, if I'm not wrong, that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go further, go together. And I think that's really important. That's the essence of activism, of positive change. And also to the allies, I think that's important to say. I mean the allies, because I'm 21, so I still consider myself a young person. But I'd say listen to young people. Remember, you have been one, and I think some people forget sometimes. So if you're willing to build bridges between youth and opportunities, I do believe that this generation will continue to surprise us with positive change.
Thank you so much for your amazing answer. I love that proverb, and I've loved how much there's been an emphasis on community in this plenary. I think that that's sort of the biggest thing in making change. And I think especially, for young people, community has been a big part of what gets us through our challenges and what also just makes us happy on a day-to-day basis, because we talk a lot about well-being. But thank you so much, Helena. And now I'll move on to Regis. What do you think is one word for advice to the new generation of change makers? And you feel free to elaborate. Do we have Regis here with us? Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't answer the question.
Sounds good. Oh, okay. The question was, what is one word of advice to change makers who are watching now, or to their allies?
Okay, so my one word is actually a phrase. It will be believe in your mission, because you're probably gonna have like 95% of chance of failing, and what's gonna get you through is your resilience, and your resilience is gonna be powered by your that mission, that vision that you have about the impact that you want to bring. That's what you're going to hang on to during difficult times, to get through those difficult times, to get through the hard times, and finding the right resources for you to deliver. So believe in your mission and keep that in close to your heart. Never, never, never give it up. just keep it close to your heart, and you'll be able to power through all those difficult times.
Thank you so much for that amazing advice. I think having faith in yourself is one of the biggest gestures of grace you can do for yourself, especially because if you don't believe in yourself and your mission, who will? And it's that kind of faith that really gets you through those obstacles like you talked about. And we did have an extra question if you want to answer, which is, what is one piece of advice that you wished you had received at the start of your journey?
I would say embrace failure. We tend to be scared of failing because of how society is made. But actually, failure is very good. Failures, you can go lower than failure, and failure actually builds you, because when you go through failure, when you go through multiple failures, the next time you try what you shouldn't do. My personal story is that I failed 2 times at building startups, and it was very hard. But the mistakes I made in those 2 times, I didn't make the same mistake the time when I did Jamo, and it worked. So you should see failure as a natural step of growing up, a step of making progress, and you should not be afraid of it. It sounds cliche, but really, trust me, one piece of advice that I can give you is that failure is actually good for you. So once you fail as part of the learning process, not scared of it, not scared of taking risks, and it can pay off ultimately.
Absolutely. I heard this phrase one time, which was, if you fail fast, you learn fast. And I really like that, especially when you think of failure as not as a bad thing, but as just a step to learning more and becoming better at whatever pursuit you choose to do. So thank you so much for sharing, Regis. And on to our next speaker, Enrique. Once again, same question. In one word, what is your advice to the new generation of change makers who are watching now, or to their allies?
So my word, it's actually 2 words, but I hope it's fine. Speak
Absolutely.
out. Speak out. A lot of my work right now, and a lot of the work of the people working in my field, both in journalism or LGBTQIA plus topics, is misinformation. But it's also misinformation and disinformation. But it's also a huge challenge for anyone working in women's rights, in climate change, in inclusive policymaking. We need people to speak out and share their stories and share the different layers of reality to fight all the misinformation and disinformation that are out there and that are preventing governments and also civil society from making the world a better place. Not only when it comes to LGBTQIA plus topics, but when it comes to everything, basically. So I would say that do not be scared to speak out. And as I said before, share your story in whichever way, shout it out loud if it's needed, because even if you think that no one cares, I guarantee that there's someone out there that to whom that story will mean the world. So please speak out, because we have a huge task ahead when it comes to making the world a better place for everyone, especially for young people.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think it also connects to what Daniela said, which is, sometimes when you speak out and you share your story, you'll find that there are a lot of people that relate and who also are very grateful to have a community to share that experience with. And so I think that's very, very powerful advice. Thank you so much. And then our next question, is there advice that you wished you had received at the start of your journey?
I was going to talk about failure, but that was already talked about. So I think I would have been told that it's okay to be kind to yourself. It's okay to take your time to get somewhere. You don't need to do everything in the first years of your career. You don't even need to get to the same places that all the people have gotten. Everyone is different, and we are the most powerful version of ourselves when we are in connection with ourselves, and when we give ourselves the room to show the world the best version of ourselves. So I think that in order to change the world, you first have to be at peace with yourself, and you first need to sleep. You need to have, mental health and physical health. So I think it's very important that those who have, especially those who have very tasks and that are going through very hard times, remember that it is okay to be kind to yourself, so that you can then be kind to others and make the world a better place.
Absolutely. I love that advice. I think I'm 18 right now, and I think a lot of people my age are feeling this looming pressure to just get stuff done, to achieve success early. But there's just so much time that we have to really think about the things we love to do and pursue them. And I think that's very, very helpful advice that I will take into consideration. But thank you again. And for our final speaker, again, same question. One word, Daniela. What is your advice to the new generation of change makers who are watching you, or to their allies?
Mine's going to be an easy one. Be brave. I love what some of the other speakers were saying. I think it's so important to kind of really understand the power that young people have in terms of creating change. And I've had an opportunity, I'm a little older than others on the panel, and part of the reason why I started the Brave movement was because I feel like I have a responsibility. It's so hard to come out as a survivor. It's so hard to say that you were sexually abused or assaulted. And so to create that space so that generations to come can have less stigma and less discrimination when they choose to come forward. And I think being brave is about, speaking your truth. It's about demanding change. It's not necessarily about telling your own personal story. That comes with a lot of challenges, and you have to be really well prepared to do that. But as part of the movement, we're encouraging people to stand up for the issue. And then whether or not you want to share your own experience is something that's very personal. And I think something that people need to give a lot of thought to, because it does come with some of the negative consequences that Enrique had mentioned. And, people aren't always kind. and we feel it, especially when you're demanding the kinds of change from very powerful actors. And I've had the opportunity, to work with US government. I've worked for the UN. I can tell you that you can do all the research in the world and have all the kind of data and the programmatic work that happens. But if you don't have people knocking on the door and saying, this needs to be different, it's not going to happen. So do it. Go out there, create change, raise your voice, demand the kinds of things that you want to see. People might, at first ignore you, but eventually they can't ignore you. And be prepared, because, there's some powerful people out there that want the world to stay just as it is. And it's going to take, a lot of courage and a lot of us in community working together to demand the changes we want to see. So I think really that's my word. And maybe for the advice, should I just transition to the second question?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I really love what everyone has said. I love the idea of embracing failure 100%. I also really like this idea of self-care, and especially for a movement like ours that's dealing with so much trauma that's everywhere around sexual violence and abuse. Really, the importance of self-care becomes front and center. And I've seen it over and over again. Amazing young people who are out there trying to create change, and then they burn out. And then we lose them to the, they can't do it anymore. They give up. They need a break, and we end up losing people that are so amazing because it's just too much. So pace yourself, take care of yourself. And I'm going to read this quick quote because I love it. Audre Lorde, who's an American writer and just phenomenal advocate, said, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare." So take good care of yourself so that you can keep changing the world.
That is some amazing advice. I loved how you talked about the nuances of being brave and how that doesn't necessarily mean putting your personal experiences out there on the line while you can still be an ally, and really protecting yourself when it comes down to it. Yeah, no, that's just amazing advice that I think we can all really remember about, you know, like caring for yourself is an investment in yourself. It's never a waste of time. It's never something that you have to put off for like when you're older or when you're more successful or something like that. It's something we can all take steps to do. So thank you all, the panelists, for your amazing advice. I think everyone watching has taken something from it. And we do have some extra time. So I would like to end with one question that I think is very relevant to the idea of community that we've been talking about today. And so I'm very interested to hear, who is someone that has been a huge support in your life or an ally to you that you're very grateful for in your journey? And we can start again, go through the same order of speakers. So Helena, would you like to say something about that?
Sure, it would definitely be my mom. My mom has always been the person who, first of all, inspired me to go into gender equality activism. And well, she just supports me every day. So I think she's definitely this person. So she's inspiring, and she makes sure that, this activist will not burn out. And when I'm close to that edge, she's like, are you taking care of yourself? You need to take a break. You have time. So like all the advices that I just repeated here are from my mom, and they usually work. So I think that's it's really, I think it's really beautiful to see this intergenerational sharing of knowledge. So yeah, that would be her.
That's such an amazing answer. My mom is also one of my biggest supporters, and I'm very grateful to have her. And I think just having someone that reminds you periodically to check in with yourself is so helpful. So thank you for sharing. I think hopefully Regis is still on the call with us. Do you have someone that you want to share? Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Do you have someone that you want to share?
I feel like Elena is my sister because my answer is my mom too, and she does the exact same thing as what she said. Yeah, she's been there from day one, supporting and pushing me, believing in me when nobody believed. And she's also part of the journey. I can always go back to her, And again, all the things that I said here, one of some of the things that she, repeated to me on the regular basis, so that I don't forget about what's my mission, what's the impact. But at the same time, take care of myself, because if I'm not well, I can't actually do anything for anybody else. So it'll definitely be my mom too.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing. And then our next speaker, Enrique, do you have someone you'd want to share? Not sure if he's just frozen on my screen. Okay, so hopefully we get his connection back. But in the meantime, Daniela, would you like to share who a supporter in your life has been?
Partner, my boyfriend, who has been particularly.
Could I go ahead? Enrique, I'm not sure we can hear you.
Hi.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
Oh, he's back.
I apologize. I'm on holiday, so the internet is not great. But I was gonna talk about my mom, but I'm not, because everyone talks about their moms, but mom, I love you. I wanna talk about my boyfriend, who has been very supportive in this journey since I did this big career shift, in not only supporting me professionally, but also reminded me, as I said before, to take that time for myself, to take that space to see things with more perspective, and to reflect on what my goals are, not only when it comes to work and when it comes to changing the world, but also when it comes to our life, when it comes to my life, what my personal goals are as a person. What do I want to be doing, not only in my work time, but also in my private time in 20 years or in 10 years or next year. And I think it's very important to have those people that remind you when you are very obsessive with what you're doing, and you might be good at it and you might love it, but you still need that energy outside work and outside activism or journalism or whatever you're doing, and have those people, be it partners, be it friends, be it family, that remind you that there's a world out there and that you are not just your cause or your job. You are much more than that. And somehow connecting with what Regis said before, and that kind of like shows us that, failures don't matter, because you are much more as a person than your cause or whatever work you're doing. And I think sometimes we forget that because we really love what we're doing, but it's good to have those people in our lives that remind us that we are much more than what we're fighting for.
Oh, I love that answer. Thank you so much for sharing. I totally agree that it's very easy to get tunnel vision, especially when you're working on something that you love and are so passionate about. But it's so nice and very important to have people who remind you, how big the world is and how much more there is. So thank you so much, Enrique. And then finally, Daniela, would you like to share who a big supporter in your life has been?
Regis and Helena are our brother and sister here, and I'm with Enrique. I'm going to talk about amazing life partners who help us kind of be the best selves. So my husband and partner is just amazing, and I want to do a shout out to feminist men who really support and help women succeed, grow, and become the leaders that they really want to be. And so I'm super grateful for that. And it's amazing to see that there are so many more feminist men out there every day, which gives me great hope.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And huge shout out to all of our amazing panelists. And to our audience, let's all promise to do one thing that'll level up our lives or make someone else's day better. It's all about taking small steps. And when we all promise to help, it can lead to a massive impact on our communities. So before we close the session, I encourage you to make sure to check out the product launch sessions on new tools and guidance, all based on the latest evidence and geared towards making lives better for adolescents. These include an updated global accelerated action for the health of adolescents by the World Health Organization and UNH6 and PMNCH, the Adolescent Wellbeing Investment Case, where it says the cost of inaction is 1.7 trillion per year, and measurement approaches to support countries in designing policies and the Program for Accelerated Action, and others. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you so much to our amazing panelists. Let each of us be the champion and change maker for adolescent well-being. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Bye. Have a great day.